there's no box. Everyone can have fun and think if we aren't enjoying what we're doing, we shouldn't be doing it. And so sometimes that's hard with client projects, but our internal passion projects or experiments that we call it should be fun.
Aradhana, I am so glad we finally get to talk. I feel like we've emailed back and forth a bunch of times, and I've been fascinated with the LittleLabs for a little while now. But I was trying to research you. I asked ChatGPT for some good questions, and actually, the first one it came up with was, you moved from India to the United States to pursue animation. And, in our industry, that's like kind of a unique story. And I was wondering if you could just kind of tell everybody that story, not the whole thing, kind of abridge it a little bit. But how did you end up moving from India to the US?
Yeah, absolutely. So like most artists, I love drawing, I love painting, and I was enamored by cartoons and Disney movies and Cartoon Network, all of that good stuff. But in middle school, I kind of stumbled upon a book by Preston Blair. It was I think it was like How to Draw for Cartoons. And that the light bulb kind of went off in my head. I was like, oh, I can do this for a living. And so my curiosity just kind of kicked off there. And I started researching more about how, could this be a viable career? At that time in India, there weren't a lot of people kind of pursuing this career. And there wasn't a lot of information as there is now. And there weren't a ton of colleges or schools. So I started to look at the United States, and SCAD was one of the top schools for me on my list. And that just became my goal to kind of apply for college, and ended up getting a scholarship, and I landed here in the US. So yeah. That's kind
amazing.
Of the brief version of it.
Well, so let me ask you about this. So because, and I'm guessing it might have been different when you were growing up, but now there's this term I hear a lot, Bollywood, right? So there is a whole film industry in India that's really big, and there's these giant budgets, and there's a lot of work there. Is there an animation version of that? Like, why did you have to move across the world to do this?
There was some animated content that was being created in India, but a lot of it was mostly around like Indian mythology. And it was just the quality wasn't quite there yet at the time that it is probably now. And I was interested in seeing different kind of stories, and not necessarily just what was being done in India at the time. And I wanted to really learn the craft, because if you went for a college, and this is I'm talking 2007, 2005, there was, you would be taught kind of like the software, but not necessarily the foundations back then. I know a lot has changed since then, and there's a lot of great places at the moment right now. And of course, online courses like School of Motion. So
Thank you.
we just didn't have that. So I just knew I wanted to do that. And a big goal for me was also, I wanted to work for Disney. That was one of my dreams, to be able to work there. And so that all nudged me along to pursue it in the US.
That's awesome. Well, you did achieve that dream. So you did work at Disney, correct? So
I did.
So how did you get the gig, and what were you doing there?
So when I first started out, right after college, I was working at interactive game companies, a lot of startups. And one of the startups I was working for was sort of being considered to be bought over by Disney because of the work we were doing at the time. That deal kind of fell through, but Disney ended up kind of hiring the creative, and that sort of gave me a kind of foot in the door. They kind of liked the work that I was doing, and they were building a team, an interactive team within Disney at the time. So the timing was perfect. That kind of led me to the job there, and I worked there for several years developing apps, and I got to work with Pixar, Disney directors, working on different interactive games. So it really, really was an amazing experience working there.
That's really cool. And is that where you met Camilla, who is your co-founder and also husband and also baby daddy? Is that where you two met?
Absolutely. Yeah, we met at Disney working together. And so that kind of sparked our working dynamics as well. And he was kind of illustrating, and I would animate. So we didn't work too much on the same projects, even though we were at Disney. But when we came back home from work, we would kind of collaborate and have like different ideas kind of bouncing off of each other. That sort of kind of sparked into like us collaborating more and more. That turned into the LittleLabs.
Yeah. So what was it like working at Disney? Because I'm imagining young Aradhana in India, like imagining one day, I'd love to work at Disney, and then you end up there. And how did the reality of it line up with what you'd kind of envisioned?
nothing ever kind of like lines up exactly as
Wow.
you dream of it. It was an amazing experience. I definitely think so, but it kind of like gives you a kind of reality check. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, any company is sort of or corporation. They have their needs to meet, and you work there. You have to kind of make sure you deliver on projects, like all of that office dynamics still come into play. But it really kind of really like I met so many talented people, learned a lot. I really honed my kind of leadership skills at Disney, and I kind of owe it to a lot of my supervisors or directors and things. So I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
wasn't necessarily that yeah, it's nothing like specific to Disney. It's just that when you're
Hmm.
growing up and you're watching movies, you're imagining, oh my gosh, there's probably beanbag chairs everywhere and people leaning back and just
Yeah.
drawing and it's fun.
Well, there was that for sure.
Yeah, but it's a job, right? I
The
mean, it
job,
is a
yeah. Mhm.
job. There's budgets, there's layoffs and stuff.
Or budget cuts. There's reorgs and layoffs, and that's kind of all part of it. And the first year, you're kind of just kind of getting the taste of it all because it's such a giant company. You're trying to get your foothold, and like
Yeah.
where do you fit in into this giant organization? And then you kind of get the groove of it and learn a lot. And yeah, it's a job at the end of the day. And so that bubble bursts a little bit, when you achieve your dream and you're like, this is amazing. Oh, but it's also just a
Right.
job. Yeah,
There is
yeah,
a cost to it. Yeah, that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so you're young Aradhana in India. You move all the way across the world, which I'm sure was probably scary too. I mean, like
It
completely
was.
different country and everything. And you moved to Savannah, Georgia, which I got to
Mhm.
imagine there was some culture shock, right? That's a
There
different
was,
place.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely. But I feel like I was very grateful for it that it was a small town and a kind of artist community with the college, and not necessarily I was in New York City or Los Angeles. That would have been a probably harsher culture shock coming in
yeah.
there. So I was very grateful for that, and there was a lot of international students at SCAD, so you really do feel like everybody's kind of going through the same kind of experience, and they have international office organizations and things. So yeah, it kind of smoothed it out, but definitely there was a huge culture shock in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I saw students go through a similar experience at Ringling because there's a lot of international students there too. And that is the
Hmm.
cool thing about it. If you're going to do a giant move like that, trying to just move directly to LA and start working or something, that seems
Yeah.
like super hard mode. Yeah. So what was it like
Yeah.
moving from Savannah to LA?
Well, I didn't have a car, so that was really hard when I first moved out here. I actually moved
Legs
across.
must have gotten
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah. I was freelancing at the time, and I kind of like went coast to coast, and I moved a lot after graduating. So I moved to LA first, then moved to New York City for a job. Ended up moving to San Francisco like a year later, and eventually made my way to LA when I got the job at Disney. So I kind of did like a coast to coast move multiple times, which was kind of amazing. I got to kind of see the taste of different cities. It was overwhelming at first, but once you start to kind of find your groove, your kind of niche, your friends. I love Los Angeles. I love living here, and
Oh, that's
couldn't find
awesome.
like
Yeah.
it's home for me now. So
I love it. Yeah, I have a little brother there, and he's lived there for years. He loves it too. So, okay,
mm-hmm.
so you're at Disney. You got your dream job. It's not exactly what you thought it would be. It's a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're at Disney. You're doing work. I assume that's pretty cool. And then you and Camilla decide to leave. What? Explain
Right.
that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, we'd been working several years at Disney, and eventually the magic sort of starts to wear off, and I was really looking for what's next because every time you achieve a dream, you kind of live it, and then the question always comes up: what am I going to do next? Like, what's that next dream? What's that next moment that's going to push me and kind of challenge me? And I was starting to feel that. I was also not loving all the projects at the moment that I was working on. And at the same time, Camila and I were kind of collaborating on the side. Like I had mentioned before, we would come home, we'd like, he would illustrate something, I would start animating. I was also the time I was picking up After Effects because my career before was all 3D animation.
Hmm.
And I kind of self-taught myself After Effects for a couple of years. And we were like, oh, this is super fun. Like, this is so much more interesting right now than what I'm doing at work. And eventually we were sort of like, it's now or never. We don't have kids. We're young. We can kind of, we have a little money saved up. Let's just jump off the cliff. Let's, we have a parachute. Let's see if it works or not. And we're just going to do it. So he quit 7 months before me, and then I quit after, and we just dove right in. The initial goal was not to build a studio. It was sort of like something that grew organically. We just wanted to freelance as an artist duo or individually. And eventually the projects just ended up growing larger and larger. And we were like, okay, we do need a studio set up. We need to hire people. And it just came naturally as the years passed by. Yeah.
That's a tale as old as time. So I want to ask you about something that you said in the pre-interview. You said that taking that risk was the best decision you ever made in your career. And, like I've done similar things, and I know lots of artists have had that moment where it's like, I'm here, it's not perfect, but it's comfortable and it's safe, or it feels safe. And I'm going to jump off this cliff and like just pray that there's a parachute I can grab at some point. What did you guys do anything to like overcome that fear? Were there any like mental tricks or anything you did to be able to actually take that leap?
I think getting a little bit of a savings, so we have a bit of soft landing. So we saved up for a couple of months to give ourselves a little bit of a runway that we were able to build up a client base and projects. We were lucky enough that a couple of days after each of us quit, we had projects kept coming in.
Nice.
That's just good luck. And we'd also been posting a lot on social media before we made the decision, so we knew people liked our work, and we were getting good feedback from folks. And back in the day, like 10 years ago, social media, you would post something and, you would really see immediate results. When it came to marketing, things have changed and evolved right now. The things that we were doing then don't work anymore. And we can talk a little bit about that later.
Yeah, we will.
So those were some kind of foundations we had been putting together before we jumped off that cliff, for sure. Yeah.
Gotcha. Was any part of you thinking, all right, worst case, this doesn't work, we get no work, we blow through our savings, then what? Like, were you nervous about the worst case scenario, or were you just pretty optimistic?
We were fairly optimistic, and we would just say to ourselves, if it doesn't work out, we'll just go find another job at that stage. Yeah. Well, there's always going to be companies, like Disney's always going to be there, and we can try again or find another company that's looking for work.
Yeah, I love that. And I would just kind of point out what you just said to everyone listening, because that's actually really amazing advice. Like when you have to take that leap, sometimes it feels like, well, it either works or I end up homeless. And it's almost never that. Like, there's always, if you really think it through, it's like, well, I could just like go and beg for my job back. Like that'd be the worst case scenario, right? Or
Right, exactly.
I have to crash on my friend's couch for a couple of months and buy them pizza while I figure it out. Okay, so you guys leave. You're freelancing, you're getting so much work, and the projects get bigger. Finally, you're like, we need a studio, needs a name. I'd love to hear the story behind the name TheLittleLabs.
So TheLittleLabs was our artist duo name, and it just stuck on. It was essentially us being like, this is us. We're not a giant company. We like being small. Especially it came off as a reaction to we were just at a larger company at Disney. And so it was our way of kind of honing who we are and embracing who we are, which is little. And the labs part was essentially just the experimentation that we did as we were starting out. We sort of kind of changed our career, leaving Disney and starting off here. We jumped into the motion industry, essentially motion design industry that we weren't part of before. We were working on interactive digital experiences. The
name Little, do you ever think like, well, shoot, I mean, you guys are still little, but you could grow and be big one day. Did that ever occur to you?
No, it didn't. And we've sort of remained little all this time, and we love that. I mean, if we grow, we never want to be giant. We actually very directly didn't want to be giant, and that was sort of we liked being small, and we were just embracing that. We knew we never wanted to go into like a 50 or 100-person studio ever. So yeah,
I love that. I really love that. Okay, so you said that was your the best thing you did was taking that risk. You also said the biggest mistake in your career was not reaching out for help and mentorship when you knew you were struggling. You thought you had to figure out everything on your own. Was there some like specific like moment where you realized that, or was it just like a hard lesson you learned over and over again?
Just a hard lesson I learned over and over again. I think it stems from being a perfectionist, like thinking that I don't need to pause and like evaluate and reach out for help because I was like, oh, I should be born and I should know everything. You kind of go through this process when you're young. You're like, you're in college. You're like, why can't I draw perfect? Like, and so you kind of put all this pressure on yourself. Or I did at least. And that was sort of hard learning where I'm like, okay, I do need help. I need to ask for help over and over again. And especially after leaving or like at Disney and leaving Disney, there was a lot, you come to a point in your career where you kind of bump up against the threshold of how much you know, and you kind of need to make that jump of, okay, I do need to challenge myself. I need to get out of my comfort zone. And those were the kind of learnings that occurred to me. And uh, that's when my peers at Disney were like, hey, like, what are you struggling with? Let's chat about it. And that kind of opened up a moment where like, oh, I could ask for help. And when you see your peers ask for help, it kind of makes it normal to go and reach out, say that you're struggling, and that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just said what is on a lot of people's minds. That I think
Right.
a lot of creative people have that drive to like, no, I'll just figure everything out myself. I don't want to ask. I don't want to be a
Hmm.
pain. I'll just figure it out.
Hmm.
I should learn that lesson, Aradhana. That's what I struggle with too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So now you've got the Little Labs, and you guys are starting to grow. And I've had this experience, I know a lot of people listening have, going from an artist to a business owner
Hmm.
is really tricky, right? Especially
Right.
once you start growing and you hire and you've got people you're managing and stuff like that. So I'm curious, how did you find that transition to be, and what were some of the challenges that you had to figure out?
The biggest one was that you realize you're running a business, and
Yeah,
it's a creative business, but it is in the end a business, and you have to worry about profit margins and your accounting and all of that. And thankfully, I had a little bit of background in accounting from back in high school. I studied business and commerce, so I wasn't completely oblivious to it all.
that's
But it was
great.
a it was a steep learning curve, even knowing all of that. The motion industry, as you know, is like this, everyone's super helpful. We reached out to a couple of studios who were already in business and asked for advice on how they were kind of doing their accounting, or how they were having conversations about contracts, because that's a big one that most people overlook, that needing an official agreement with freelancers you're hiring or just clients, and kind of making sure you protect yourself. And generally everybody, this kind of goes back to asking for help. And you realize that you need to get all of that, all your ducks in the row, make sure you protect yourself, but also, be a good partner to your clients. Like that's a big part of it. As much as you want to protect yourself on the contract side, you also want to make sure your clients feel comfortable working with you. So it's a fine balance. And
It
I
certainly is.
also got advisors and consultants to help us kind of, every step of the way as you're growing. As you said, the complexities grow as you're dealing with HR. There's like state laws and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, you just
Yes, there
educate
is.
yourself, learn, and
Yeah.
invest. I think the biggest thing is investing in yourself. um, you invest in others, but also yourself, so you grow and help people around you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a really specific question. So you were
Hmm.
coming from a big company where, maybe you had some idea of what the budgets were for the projects you're working on, but you weren't
Hmm.
like in charge, of like setting those budgets, right? Someone would give you a
Right.
budget you'd have to
Right.
work within. And now you've got clients coming to you and they're saying, okay, we need, a marketing campaign for this thing or whatever it is. How
Hmm.
did you know what to charge? Like, how did you even figure that out?
I think based when we left Disney, we were freelancing for some time, and we knew what rates were for artists going around. And again, we talked to producers who are in the industry, so we got a sense of how much people were charging based of that.
Mhm.
And again, just talking to other studio owners, everyone's so open and transparent in sharing that knowledge. It's really been such a warm industry to come from entertainment into the motion industry, and that kind of helped us get a sense of where we need to be. Of course, we couldn't be charging like a bigger motion studio. You kind of uh, base it off your experience of where you're at, but
Mhm.
making sure you charge enough, because otherwise you're going to lower rates for everybody in the industry. So.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. I mean, I think motion design is kind of unique in that way that you can literally go ask your competitor for help. And there's so many examples of this. I mean, there's like some amazing stories out there of studios that pitch against each other, like helping each other when one needs help. So yeah, that's amazing. So, okay. So now it's been several years of the Little Labs, you know, you come across like you just know what you're doing. Like, I don't know if you're pretending, but you really seem like you get it now. And I'm curious, you know, the thing I really wanted to talk to you about was the last few years have been a huge challenge, not just for studios, but for freelancers. And there's been lots of staff, people laid off and stuff like that. And so I'm curious how do you see the difficulty level of running a studio now versus maybe, 5 or 6 years ago?
Yeah, well, we definitely had the golden era with COVID, right? And so coming off of it, I feel everybody had to kind of level set themselves coming off of it, because you cannot expect that same level of maybe budgets or amount of work flowing in. So it's been kind of, it feels like the industry is not great, but it's actually just kind of leveling off based off that. It's harder because budgets are smaller. They have shrunk a lot, and the timeline to land and book a client has been a lot longer as well. So that's been like a biggest challenge that we've been seeing, that we have conversations like 6 months ago and we're maybe just now booking that client. That's it's tough, but what has helped us is kind of not niching down essentially, because that's been a great thing. Everyone's like, niche down, be specializing in one specific thing. And what has helped us is that we've straddled both the worlds of interactive and motion at the same time. And now we're seeing those two worlds collide. So kind of, you sort of, you can't be picky at the moment. You have to kind of take in projects that are interesting, but at the same time, not that niche down specialized project that you were always looking for. And so,
interesting. That's interesting, because that goes against kind of like the trend that I guess I'm hearing on social media of like niche. And I know that there's different ways to niche down. Like you could niche into a specific industry, or you could be like, we do, brand guidelines for anybody. It could be pharmaceutical, but it's interesting that you say that though, because when I go to your site, you clearly don't have like one kind of vertical that you work in, right? You do a lot of things, but there is kind of some positioning, I guess I would say, to your studio. So how do you differentiate niching versus trying to position yourselves uniquely?
Yeah, I think our positioning is more playful, kind of playful work that kind of sparks curiosity or joy. And that's essentially niching down, but that could apply to any kind of vertical, any kind of project. So we'll do UI, UX projects or interactive projects, but at the same time, we'll do advertising campaigns. And we'll also do short form content. So it kind of bridges across all of that. And that's kind of why I mean, like, not niching down, because you don't want to be just doing explainer videos or just doing, and we barely get explainer video requests anymore. And so the industry has been changing off of it. So as long as you're, I guess, like niching down more broadly as like specializing in a kind of work, but not a particular medium, that's probably where the industry is headed at the moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100% too.
Yeah.
So you've already mentioned that, when you started, you could make a social media post and you get lots of attention right away. And if it was good, you'd maybe get offers for work. That is pretty saturated. So it's hard to stand out there now. So what's the current strategy that you're using to go out and find work and expand?
It's been heavily just personal connections. I think, coming off COVID, nobody wanted to take meetings in person. It was a lot easier to blow off a virtual meeting than a scheduled coffee or a lunch. And we're seeing a lot more people are open to meeting up in person. And so a lot of our biz dev or just kind of reaching out and exploring clients has been just relying on those personal connections. We still post and leverage LinkedIn and Instagram a lot, but it really has been personal connections that have been the most fruitful recently. Yeah.
I love that. It's the old school stuff. I'm telling you, it never goes out of style. Like that always works. And who on your team is doing that?
It's myself and Camilo. So, and our producer helps a little bit as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, 'cause I'm sure people listening to this, they're like, oh, wow. Okay. Well, what does that look like? Like, so
Hmm.
what do? You just, you find some company you'd like to work for, you find someone there, you email them and say, want to meet for coffee or something?
I think the easiest step is just people you know. You know so many people in the industry, so kind of grabbing a coffee or lunch with them, and you have conversations, and they'll be like, "Oh, like oh, this person would be great to connect you with," and they'll kind of connect you and refer you to that person, and that's the best kind of recommendation. Cold emailing is tough. I get a ton of cold emails, and I just don't even read them and delete them
Hmm.
myself. So we tried that, and it works maybe 1% of the time,
Yeah.
and
It's a
it's
numbers
brutal.
game.
It's brutal out there. So it really is just reaching out to your connections that you already have and then starting there. Sometimes that can be a dead end. I don't get me wrong. In that case, like LinkedIn is helpful because you can really look up folks on LinkedIn and DM them or message them. And sometimes, more 50, like 50-50 chance of them kind of replying, but that's a chance that we take. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it does seem like you have to be a little more sophisticated about it now
Hmm.
than maybe you did, 5, 6 years ago when you could just
Right.
make cool stuff and it would kind of spread virally and then someone
Yeah.
would see it. And now you have to follow up. And I love what you said too. Like when you're reaching out to network, which I know
Mhm.
is like a gross word for some people, but
Right.
you have to do it.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily trying to reach your client. You're trying to just hang out with someone that might know
Mhm.
someone that might know someone that has the
Right.
perfect client for you and they do an intro, and
Right.
that's better than the cold email always.
Right. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. And yeah, that's a great point that you make. You're not trying to go there and be like, hey, do you know somebody that can give
Yeah.
me a job? It's never like
Right.
that. You are just kind of hanging out as friends and um, just having a conversation and getting to know each other. And you kind of, they help you, you help them. It's sort of just like helping each other through conversation. And they may recommend you, and more often than not, that happens. And you may recommend them to somebody. So it works both ways, not just one way street. And that's a big thing I like to tell folks as well. Like, don't always be out there looking for recommendations for yourself, but also take that step to recommend your network.
Yeah, that's something I learned like pretty early with School of Motion that I still
Mhm.
do to this day. That it's one of those things where it's kind of counterintuitive. If I see an opportunity to connect two people where I get
Right.
nothing out of it, all I did, it
Right.
takes me 5 minutes. I write an email, I connect them, and then
Hmm.
I'm done. It
Hmm.
always comes back around 3, 4 years later and turns into something awesome like that
Right.
involves us, right? And
Hmm.
you have to kind of play the long game and plant all those seeds. And
Right.
I read a book once where it called that type of person a connector. And I'm like, I want to be a connector. So that's another
Hmm.
strategy too, is you can go out and connect with people. You can also connect other people and then they love you
Right.
because you connected them. And then that
Right. Mhm.
usually turns into stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the end, you're a part of a community, and
Yeah.
part of being a community is connections. And if you can facilitate that, that's you kind of setting up the community for the future.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
like you're the host of the party almost.
yeah.
So I want to learn a little bit more about the studio. So on your site you have core values, which I think is awesome because like
Mhm.
not every studio has that, and I think it's really cool. It's a good way to kind of differentiate. But also core values are supposed to be like your internal values, right? So you're supposed to
Mhm.
like infuse those into the company. And two of them are curiosity and playfulness.
Mhm.
Curiosity is one of our values too, by the way. So I like that one
Okay.
especially.
Awesome.
And you have an experiments page on
Mhm.
on your nav, which you're the little lab, so that kind of makes sense. It's on brand.
Right.
But I'm curious, like, what does that mean to you? Like, how do
Mhm.
you actually employ those values?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. At the beginning of every year, we have a company meeting where we'll talk about every, personal goals, business goals, and part of that conversation is just open for everybody to share what kind of stuff are they interested in or curious about for the year. What kind of is there a new skill that they want to learn? Is there a new type of work that they want to explore? Is there a new style, new industry trend that they feel like would be helpful for us to explore? And it kind of creates this open conversation where we're all kind of staying curious about each other, and also uh, curious about what's happening in the industry because it's one. sometimes you can just shut yourself off. Be like, I'm just going to sit here and draw and not worry about what's happening out there. So that kind of helps spark everybody to think about those things. And we generally have this brainstorm session. We take a lot of ideas together, and that kind of becomes our internal projects for the year. Um, Internal projects have always been what we call our experiments, and they have sort of always lined up to like the long game of clients, because what we love to do is what we focus on and what we share out in the world. It's like what you put out is what you're going to get back. And so it's we truly believe in that. And so that's part of being curious and being and getting clients that are curious about us. So that's where curiosity comes into to play. And the playfulness is just having fun. I think we have to remind ourselves that what we do is really fun and it's passionate. And sometimes you get kind of caught up in like deadlines and, the storyboard. We need to get this out at a certain time, or this, iterations, number of rounds of revisions, all of that can be quite overwhelming. And so we always try to stay playful in the work we do. And our internal projects are sort of that moment to be playful. There's no box. We're thinking out of the box, and everyone can have fun and think. If we aren't enjoying what we're doing, we shouldn't be doing it. And so sometimes that's hard with client projects, but our internal passion projects or experiments that we call it should be fun always. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And I think there's a good contrast. You could imagine some other studio where their core value is like consistency or something like that, right? Which maybe that works for them, but it sounds very different. Like you probably don't want that as your core value. I'm sure there's consistent quality, but
that's expected. we will be consistent. Yeah. And it's more, when we think of our core values, it's like, what is something that is not expected that we want to make sure everyone is focused on, so that we can be different, we can be unique and truly ourselves.
Yeah. I love that. Something that's not expected. That's really good. Okay. So I got a good question from Don Epstein. So we have this new program called All Access. And so these are students that are learning right now. And so I always ask them if they have any questions for our guests. And when I told them that you were coming on, they were very excited. So so Don was asking so you guys are based in LA, but your team is global and works remotely. And that's, it's interesting. Like, that was weird 8-10 years ago. It was like, how could you even do that? And now it's pretty standard. But I know from experience, because we're a fully remote company too, that it does make it more difficult to maintain the culture and the friendships and those water cooler moments of like little, spontaneous things. So how do you guys manage that and sort of, maybe manage the complicated projects that you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. We did come up on those challenges, especially the water cooler chat and being friends and having the side conversations. So we made a conscious effort to create those moments virtually. So every Monday we have our weekly meeting where we start off just talking about our weekends and creating space for that before we dive into work. And so that kind of helps create a moment for us to talk about that. And throughout the week, we sort of have Slack kind of bots, kind of prompting questions. So especially we have something called Music Fridays, where we just kind of share what everybody is listening to for the week. And it's called Music Fridays, but sometimes people will share movies or shows that they've been watching, and that sparks conversation further. We also do like meetups once a year. So last year we did we flew everybody in here in Los Angeles, and we had a little like a week of just like going out, visiting museums and hanging out, dinners, and that kind of helped really create bonds for us. And we want to continue doing that every year. That's our goal, like an annual sort of company meetup. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really important. I love that you said there's bots. That's one of the things that we've done in the past. We don't have any right now, but we used to have bots that would randomly roast you and make fun of you. And, that's I mean, our culture is probably a little different than yours, but that's that's kind of how we roll.
Oh yeah. Just the complicated projects. We just, with the cloud drive, and we have process and documentation on how we kind of build our brief. And we use Figma a lot. We kind of use it as our whiteboard, as a lot of studios have started adopting. It we just hop on a call and we can see all the cursors moving, and we'll do a mood board together or just talk a project out. It's easy to hop on a Google Meet or Zoom call, so that helps.
So I'm curious, what does your staff look like right now? Like how many designers, animators, editors? Before we get to that answer, let me tell you about School Motion All Access. All Access is a new program from us where you can take any of our classes that we offer anytime you want. You can learn After Effects, Cinema 4D, Photoshop, Illustrator, Rive, Unreal Engine, design, animation, visual effects, expressions, so much more. You can do it all with real human artists helping you along the way. Our one-of-a-kind training platform enables you to go through training at your own pace, but to also get personalized, tactical feedback on every single project you upload from one of our amazing teaching assistants. You'll also get to join our 24/7 hyper-engaged worldwide community of artists who are all on the same learning journey as you. You'll get exclusive access to live events, guest speakers, and portfolio reviews. You can earn verified credentials from us if you complete a course, and our credentials actually mean something because you've done work. Plus, we're one of the only online schools on earth to be both Adobe and Maxon certified. And if you're part of a team of 3 or more, you can join our team training program for All Access, giving you dashboards to track your team's progress, floating seats, consolidated billing, priority support, and more. So reach out on our team training page to get more information about that. And make sure you check out School Motion All Access. We are incredibly proud of it, and we hope to see you in class.
We're a 5-person team at the moment. So it's Camilo as the art director, myself, creative director. We have a producer, 1 animator, and 1 illustrator at the moment. We had to kind of pare down a little bit from the last few years. And then as projects grow, we bring on freelancers to kind of build up the team. So at any given time, we may have like 5 other freelancers or so.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's not like a massive teamwork, because I know that, when you have 5 to 10 people, managing all of that on Slack and Dropbox and Frame.io and stuff like that, it's not that difficult once you get the hang of it. When you get to like 20 or 30, then it starts to
we've
get a
been
little
up
gnarlier.
to 10, and that's when we kind of realized the challenge, and we had all these processes in place for sure.
Yeah. Actually, let me dig into that for a little bit, because one of the things that I encountered, and I know a lot of people who start businesses find this, is that there's kind of inflection points with your staff size. And so, when School Motion started, it was just me, and then there was 2 of us, then 3, we got up to 5, 6, 7, 8. I feel like when we got to 10 people, almost everything we did started to break, and we had to like basically figure out, okay, this used to work, this no longer works. And then you get past that hump. There was a period where School Motion was over 30 people full time, and then like a whole bunch of contractors. We're smaller now. We're probably like 16 full time, but still like a lot of freelancers and teaching assistants. So we've kind of gone in that mid range, but around 25 people, stuff started to break again. And so I'm curious, you named your company TheLittleLabs. You said you don't want to be big, but what does big mean to you? Like, if you could you see yourself as a 20-person team, or do you really like being this small?
That would probably be the threshold, like 15, 20 people, but we really like being this small. That's been intentional on our side to be that way as well.
Yeah, it does save you a lot of pain for sure.
And I don't think your profit grows any bigger after a certain point either, and there isn't a lot of incentive. From what I hear, after like the 20, 25%, just like working with consultants, it's not really returning much more than you think. That's what I understood. Yeah,
I'll tell you our experience, because I think you're right, but there is kind of an asterisk next to it that I would put, which is that like when you get to that level, then you're going to plateau and probably have a dip profit-wise, because all of a sudden you have to build way more systems around everything, because like right now, and hopefully this is useful for everyone listening too. Like when you're a small team, and the 2 founders are like, almost half of the full-time staff, it's pretty easy to like, you can keep your eye on everything and make sure that like the company's values are intact and that like the quality's there. If you get to 25 people, maybe you're doing 4 or 5 projects at a time. You can't possibly be on top of every single detail anymore. And then you have to trust people. So you find people you trust, but then they might need help too. And all of a sudden it becomes a sprawling thing. And so you do go through this sort of no man's land of like, whoa, it's way more expensive. We're spending a lot more. The budgets haven't, like we're spending 30% more, but we're only getting 15% more work. So we're actually making less money. But then if you can get through that, and I've seen this, on the other side with really big
Oh, yeah.
studios, like Buck and Mill. I haven't run that kind of company.
Yeah.
But I have a sense of those companies' numbers, and they're very profitable and they do really well, but they
Right.
run completely differently than you guys,
Right.
like night and day. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think delegation is probably the hardest thing as you're
Yep.
growing. And so
Yeah.
that's what you're talking about, where it's like you can't really have your hands dipped in every single aspect of the company. And we actually enjoy that for now. So we're
Yeah.
enjoying that. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, that gets back to the question of, being an artist versus a business owner. And
Right.
a lot of artists, I've written about this where,
Mhm.
especially, and I sense this in you, Aradhana, that like you seem kind of like a ambitious
Mhm.
overachiever kind of person. I
Oh,
would
yeah.
call myself that too.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and for us, it's like, we always want to get to the next level, whatever it is,
Mhm.
and then sometimes you do it and you're like, wait a minute, I actually liked the previous level way better. I was way happier.
Right. Mhm.
And so I think it's a very mature decision that you've made to stay small, even
Right.
if you change your mind in 5 years or something and you grow
Right.
bigger, but I did not have the maturity when I started School of Motion to even think about that. So
Right. Well, I love the creative work. We love doing that, and so we've let go quite a bit. I mean, I barely animate anymore. I'm
yeah.
mostly directing. But to lose that is I'm not ready for that yet. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally understandable. Well, let's talk about the sort of future-y part of the industry, because, and you kind of
Sure.
already alluded to this. I think the way you put it was that the world of, just interaction design or interactive design and motion design, now they're like slamming up against each other.
Right.
And I feel exactly the same way. I feel like we're seeing the same things. I feel like the word hasn't quite gotten out to everybody yet that is happening. And to me, it seems like a big deal. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that. Like, what are you seeing that makes you feel that way? And what do you think is causing that?
Multiple reasons. I think, well, for one, like most of our projects are now interactive based. In 2025, we don't have that many short form content projects. Just even the requests that we come in, so that's a big indicator for us that that's changing. We had that already because we were coming from that world, but that's just skyrocketed. I would say like 80% of our work now is just
Wow.
interactive based. So um, that's a big indicator for us. And what else the other part that we see, the reason why is that content creators and marketing have kind of taken up the bulk of the budget for brands, and so they're looking for more opportunities in their digital experiences to put in motion. People in general just expect motion and interaction when they're looking at digital experiences more and more. It's just expected. And
Mhm.
so that's a big reason why a lot of startups, a lot of brands are looking to do more of that work at the moment.
And when you say interactive project, I,
Hmm.
I want to get really clear on what that is,
Yeah,
because I
for
know
sure.
a lot of our listeners probably have like animated stuff in After Effects and given their client a Lottie file that then goes somewhere.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about, or something more elaborate?
Well, there's a lot of Rive for sure. So
Hmm.
that's definitely part of it. So that would be animating and then kind of creating a Lottie expert. That's been kind of going on for years, but we're seeing a lot more Rive kind of
Hmm.
requests coming in. There will also be just motion work, kind of storytelling work for digital experiences that we also do. We see a lot more requests for that. But a lot of it is in app, kind of mobile or web, even web based experiences, because uh, people are expecting more interaction just even out of a website. And so we see a lot of that work coming in.
Yeah. Now, I've been harping on this for the last 2 years at least, but to me, Rive is sort of the unlock for a lot of that for motion designers, because you could always do it, but it would require two people, an animator and a developer. And now it kind of just requires one person. I'm curious if you agree with that, or if you think I'm overstating it.
Uh, I feel like you'll always need a developer, but it kind of makes the developer's life easier.
Hmm.
Last year we would pitch Ripe quite a bit to clients, and they were very hesitant. Or when I say they, I mean developers, because
Hmm.
you kind of want control, but you're seeing more and more developers being like, yes, let's do that, because they see the benefit of why that could be helpful. It kind of saves them time a lot, and it also saves animation time. We don't have to create all these different loops and different animations and kind of map out all of that. say for a character walking and doing all these different things, which Ripe can much easier kind of tackle all of that because you have that state machine set up. So
Yeah.
that's been a huge plus. We're seeing more and more people being more open to using Ripe now than even last year.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, that's good because as of this recording, I'm in the middle of recording the second Rive course for School Motion. So that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. The other, so like, I think Rive's a big deal. I recently gave a talk in Portland, Oregon about like the 3 big deals right now in motion design. Rive and sort of the collision of interaction and motion design. The other was like real-time 3D. Are you guys doing anything with real-time 3D, or are you mostly still a 2D shop?
We're mostly 2D, but we are starting to dip into 3D work possibly this year. That has been my career before. It was all 3D VR kind of AR experiences. We've done a little bit of that with NFT work, but we're seeing more of that come back again with just web. It's amazing how much web work there is out there at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And there, I mean, and again, the tools for that, if you're doing web work, you've got Spline, which is like pretty amazing.
Right.
We've been talking to a lot of companies about like our team training stuff, and a lot of the networks now are getting really into Unreal and using it more and more for things that they used to use much more expensive solutions for. So that was one. Then the third big deal, I'm sure you can guess what it is AI. And I'm just curious, because I mean, you could spend 4 hours talking about AI, but I'm just curious, what's your take and the studio's take on AI? Like, are you guys using it yet? Are you dabbling? How do you feel about it?
We've definitely dabbled with it and experimented with it. We, the clients that we work with definitely have like verbiage in their contract that we cannot use AI as of yet, a lot of them. And so that definitely shows us that the world's not yet ready to take that leap entirely. I can say my personal opinion is a lot of art is just in the act of making it and the process of making it. And as a lot of people have probably experimented with AI and it looks great, or sort of looks great, and it just doesn't have the heart in it. So we don't use it for production work. We're happy to use AI in tools that kind of expedite the process, note taking, kind of maybe just concepting ideas right off the bat. But even then, you're like, well, everybody has the same idea because they're using AI, so that's not really unique. It kind of helps get the ball rolling, but it doesn't roll the ball all the way to the finish line. At the moment, there's people doing a lot of great work in leveraging it, but we feel like there's always going to be a need for humans to kind of bring in that human touch to it. So that's really where we stand with AI, and we'll experiment with it, and we have to embrace it for sure. It's like Photoshop many years ago, and our take is what's going to go away is that there's going to be people who don't care and, will use stock photography, for their work, or there's people who are going to hire professionals because that's great art. And there's always going to be room for both.
Yeah. I love what you just said, that it can get the ball rolling, but it can't roll the ball all the way. That's brilliant. I might steal that around. That's really good. Yeah. I agree. I agree with everything you just said. That's basically what I said in the talk was that, I think it can be useful for concepting, but using these AI tools, it's also becoming a skill, because some of them, like, I don't know if you've used Midjourney recently, it's very deep now. Like there's so much you can do with it, and you actually have quite a bit of control now. But if you don't know that, and you don't know how it works, and you kind of have to learn how to speak to it, you got to whisper the right prompt to it to get what you want. But there's tricks around that too. So, but yeah, for production elements, it's not really that useful yet. And for animation, I think it's useless at this point. It doesn't really do a good job of that. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I think there was a music video by Cuckoo Puffs that I'm sure you saw that.
I'm sure I did. Yeah.
Yeah. They leveraged just parts of the production, but in the end, it was a human putting it all together. And so that's definitely where it's headed, and we need to embrace it. And it's going to get better, and we're just going to have to be ready for what's next.
Yeah, I know. I've started, I remember, maybe last year, early in the year, I always felt a little hesitant to talk about how cool some of this stuff is and how useful it actually is, because there's, understandably, there's like a big backlash against it, and there still is somewhat of a backlash against it. But I I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like it is just kind of inevitable that like this
It
is
is, yeah.
happening and it's here.
Hmm.
And if someone else, see, to me, the secret is you have to have good taste and you have to have good
Right.
ideas, right?
Hmm.
And when you go to the Little Lab site, there's like a point of view and there's like a style to what you guys do that I could maybe try to feed one of your images into Midjourney and it gives me something similar. It's going to suck. It's not right. So if I want that, I'm going to come to you, and I don't really care if you do it the old fashioned way and draw every single frame and it
Hmm.
takes you 6 months, or there's a new AI tool that gets the same result, but it takes you a week. I'd
Right.
rather you do that, frankly. But
Right.
I still need you to do it. That's kind of
Right.
how I feel.
Yeah. It's sort of cutting out the tedious, laborious work. And focusing on the more creative work where I'm actually
Yeah.
creating and making stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and, we were talking earlier, we both have kids.
Hmm.
I also realize that my kids are growing up in a world with AI. They're not going to
Right.
have the same ethical qualms about it that like our
Right.
peers do. I
Hmm.
remember growing up when MP3s were invented, and like I thought it was the greatest thing ever. Like, oh my God, I can listen to the new Limp Bizkit album whenever I want. And I probably should have picked a better band than that. But
You're
but
fine.
like all the older musicians and people around me, they hated it. And
Right.
to their credit, it did totally, disrupt the music industry in a big way. And
Right.
it took years to kind of rebuild into something that works now.
Right.
And you could argue it doesn't work as well. I see that correlate,
Right.
that corollary. It's happening here. And the ones that get on board and figure out, okay, it's happening. How do I adapt? How do
Right.
I
Hmm.
make this work while still doing great work and competing and doing
Right.
better than people who aren't using it? I think that might be
Exactly.
the only way. Yeah.
Yeah. You sort of have to either hop on the wagon or you're going to get left behind in
Yeah.
a way, but in a way that's respectful and kind of maintains integrity at the same time. So yeah,
I agree.
that's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I even said that on my talk. I said, people who just they don't want to touch it. I actually have
Hmm.
deep respect for that because that's really standing behind your morals and your ethics
More,
and your
yeah.
scruples.
Hmm.
But I've seen this before, right? I've seen this movie play out once before,
Hmm.
actually a few times. Because there's I think I don't know. You were probably too young for this, but I mean, I remember being a kid and reading about this, like when 3D animation came around.
Hmm.
Right. It's kind of a
Yeah.
similar thing. At first it sucked and everyone said, look, it looks terrible. Like it doesn't look as
Yeah.
good and hand drawn animation's way better. And
But
eventually it got better and better and better. And then it
right.
kind of took over. And so I want to be kind of the person warning everyone. Like, I think that's going to happen and we need to
Right.
make peace with it. Yeah.
And at some time it'll all level out because now hand drawn
Yeah.
animations, it's still something that
It's
we're
still
working
there.
with. But yeah, it's still there and exists, but just not at the same amount or same
Yeah.
percentage as before. It's not going to go away entirely.
So I want to dig a little bit back into the UI and UX stuff for one more minute
Sure.
because, a lot of our students are kind of, they get into this because they're video editors or they're designers, and then they find out about After Effects. They get really excited and they go look at all the amazing work out there. And I think one of the challenges right now is that a lot of like the best work, if I was going to point to like, if I was going to give someone the 10 best motion design pieces that I think have ever been created, a lot of them are older, like they're a few years old. And I think that might just be because of how, like you mentioned, marketing has changed,
Hmm.
right? Like these
Yeah.
big prestige 2-minute pieces, that's not really as big of a thing anymore. And a
Right.
lot more
Hmm.
budget is going into the stuff that you guys are doing. It's like, how do we make this experience of like our website or this app or this digital display in a museum or whatever it is? How do we make that cooler? And it's a
Hmm.
lot harder to like make a nice case study about that on your website.
Right.
And it's kind of harder to point to. And so I'm curious, like how you guys think about marketing yourselves as being able to do that.
Hmm.
There's kind of the traditional motion design portfolio, which sort of works for that, but doesn't quite work as well. And how do you tell that story that you can do that stuff?
That's definitely been a challenge, as you said. We're
Yeah.
still kind of navigating that. A lot of it is, recording the screen and the interaction. We still need to be better at that ourselves, and you kind of touching on a point that we're still figuring out on our side. But it has been recording the interaction itself, putting a little like sizzle or reel together, or a little, and people are like kind of cut up reel together of kind of showcasing that work. But you're right, that's kind of tough because a lot of times we'll pass off the work and we don't really get to record that in action, and we just don't get the opportunities to get out there and shoot. I think that would be ideal if we can kind of
Yeah.
shoot people interacting with that, but it's sort of the thing. We're already moved on to the next project, but you just gave me an idea. We should do that on our site. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually, but my old studio, this was years ago, we did that. We did some work that was in Times Square on those cool billboards. Right. And we thought, well, we have all the renders. It'd be cooler if we just went to New York and actually shot them. And that actually got us more of that work. So that is a good idea. You should definitely do that.
For sure.
All right, last question, Aradhana. So, I think there's a lot of small studios that, have kind of sprung up, especially during COVID because there was so much work. Mm-hmm. And I think that the challenge that they face is that they kind of came up and built around the old way of the industry working, right? And it's sort of still works that way, right? I mean, you mentioned you can still just take someone out to coffee and that turns into work. That's not a new thing. That's an old thing. There's still tons of linear motion design work out there. Networks still need graphics packages. Brands still need explainer videos, all that stuff. But there's this door opening to all of this other work. And then on top of that, above all of that, marketing is changing. Like you mentioned, a lot of marketing budget goes to like influencer marketing now, which doesn't really need motion design, right? Or maybe more interesting ad spending and buying TikTok ads, which also look like they were shot in selfie mode. So as far as like advice or trends you're seeing for small studios, studios, let's say from 5 to 10, maybe 15 people. If I said predict what the next 2 to 3 years look like, what's gonna make studios your size successful? What do you think it is?
I think shifting to becoming content creators ourselves, like that's going to be a big shift that we're going to see in the coming years. I think people aren't waiting for a green light from the bigger studios or investors to kind of go and just build and do stuff. And that's certainly the kind of mindset that we're keeping on our side as we look into the future. You'll see a lot more creative thinkers. And what I mean by that is you're not just providing a service as a studio. You're really coming in with your expertise. That's always been there, but you're just going to see more of that. Again, with with AI kind of taking over the industry and what AI can do, it's going to be a lot more focus on what cannot AI do that I can offer in this moment or in the future. And that will be, like we were talking about just a little bit ago, the ideas, the kind of creative brainstorming. Those are the things that we're going to see more of, and what's going to be expected more of. Smaller studios or just any studio in general. I feel like as a smaller studio, you could get away with that. That's something that was left for larger studios to kind of solve. And you're seeing a lot more smaller studios take on those kind of projects at the moment. And so you'll see more of that in the future. And that just goes to just embracing AI that we were just talking about.
Yeah. And you mentioned, that you think small studios may need to see themselves as content creators. I'm curious what you mean. Like, could you give an example of what does that actually look like? Does that mean making your own show and pitching it to Netflix? Or are you talking about something else?
Yeah, I think not even pitching to Netflix, possibly just creating it on your own and kind of creating this like content creation revenue or avenue. I think I've just been talking to a few folks, and you can see everybody's mindset churning in that way, and ours is as well in that respect. So we'll see more of that coming through.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're making me think of how, when I got into the industry, I graduated college in 2003. And that was kind of right at the dawn of, you always had this relationship between like a production company and an ad agency in the middle, and then the client. And then the agency was kind of lifted out, and you started to have branded content where, BMW might hire a film studio to just like make some cool brand films for them. I think that was like a famous example. And, I never thought of it this way, but I mean, right now, the motion design studio, like typically you've got a client and a customer, like the client's customer, and you're kind of in the middle translating.
Right.
And maybe, are you saying maybe there's a world where you don't always need the client? You just go directly to the customer.
You just go directly to the customers. Yeah, that's really we're going to see more of, because we're going to need to be inventive and kind of create. That's our take. We're going to create our own brand, and there'll be all this client work, but you also have your own customers at the end of the day. Yeah.
That's really interesting. You're making me think of IV Studio in Tennessee,
they're
and how
a great example. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they I don't even know if they do motion design anymore. They make board games, and they probably make 100 times.
I think they
as
kind of
were.
offshoot from what I heard was that they have their games studio, that they make games, and they still have their animation studio. And for us, we have our animation studio, but we're also building a brand on the side called Cloudy and Friends, and it's a kids brand, and that we've been building. And so that's kind of why, just talking to a lot of studios out there, I don't want to speak for other people, but that's just how we're where we see that's going to go for sure.
Okay. Well, I thought this interview was over, but now I need to hear a little bit about Cloudy and Friends.
Sure,
What's your vision for that?
Sure. Yeah. This was an idea by Camille and I for years. We've been churning on this idea. We love working on kids entertainment, kids sort of content. And our goal with that is to establish a brand just kind of that gives joy to the world, but also at the same time kind of teaches emotional learning skills for children. So we've been developing that brand very slowly on our side. Last year, we launched it. We have a store at the moment. A part of it is also creative play. So we have puzzle sets of physical products that we're selling on our online store that you can go visit, cloudyandfriends.com. So,
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, awesome. We'll definitely link to that. Okay. And so is the goal eventually, and this really is my last question, is the goal eventually, because the way that, my brain immediately goes, okay, well, this becomes a way, because if you have a direct to consumer brand, Cloudy and Friends, where you can make cool stuff and you find an audience for that and they're paying for it, does that help subsidize the animation studio? Does it become kind of a flywheel where the two feed into each other?
I think our goal is a flywheel, that it feeds into each other. That's the work that we like to do, not necessarily just that. It's going back to what's your passion, where your soul, feels satisfied, and it's come to a point where everyone's going to be thinking this way, and they already are. What's most meaningful to me that I put out in the world, and you're going to see more of that, because AI is going to be doing a lot of the other work that we're doing. So what's next? What's going to satisfy me next? Yeah.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss any of the amazing upcoming guests we have on the School in Motion podcast, or any of the other awesome content we have. Everything we talked about will be in the show notes, and I hope to see you next time.